My name is John Pasfield, and the title of this reading will be Glenn Gould, Video 9, Touring 2. So this is my novel, Glenn Gould, Light and Dark, a novel by John Pasfield. And here's a summary on the back cover of the novel. Glenn Gould's life as a musician begins as a fairy tale, as his very first recording, the Goldberg Variations, skyrockets the young Canadian to the top of the music world as a must-see and must-hear concert pianist with sold-out performances all around the world. And then, at the height of his powers and his popularity, he makes a decision about his music and his life, which splits the music world right down the middle and remains controversial to this day. Now, a beginning artist faces choices, and at the most basic level, the choices are two. So here's number one. To follow along in the well-worn footsteps of the artists who have come before him or her, which in light of that artist's talent and interest might well be a case of wandering off track. Or number two, to create a new path across new territory which will lead to a better place, but which can be very difficult to perceive and to follow. Well, Glenn Gould has an artistic path with a red carpet laid out in front of him, but he comes to realize that it is not the artistic path that he wants to follow. So the artistic path that's laid out in front of him with the red carpet is a touring as a touring concert pianist. I'll just find the page here, page 21. Of chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 3. So concert pianist who tours the world, goes to all the concert halls and plays the same music over and over, the music that everyone wants to hear and comes to hear and pays money to hear. So, okay. Chapter 3. Now, I'm only going to read 8 sections of chapter 3. In every chapter of a novel of mine, there are 8 sections of what I call the outer frame present moment. All that means is the story. Between each of those 8 sections are 7 sections of deepening imagery which comments on the story. So I'm only going to read the outer frame. Shuttling back and forth between Europe and North America, one tour joined to another like coupled cars on the high-speed trains. A schedule in my pocket with the dates and the towns. Uneasy, and I know exactly why. Here's an image in his mind. Taxis throbbing in a midtown traffic snarl. I am not a recording artist. I am not a recording artist at all. I am a traveling concert pianist, a peripatetic vaudevillian who takes a moment here and there to cut a record. I was in a hurry. I was a man with a plane or a train to catch. A date to play the same pieces of music that I've played so often before. No time to listen to the playback. No time to re-record. No time to remove the offending note. The flaw that makes me unhappy with every recording I do. So one flaw in a recording upsets him, and yet there's no time to take the flaw out or to re-record. Okay, leaving out a half page of deepening imagery, we go to this, the second thought about action. Flying back to Europe, the Salzburg Festival, a week of restless dreams about flying on a plane, an image in his mind, a burning airplane hurtling towards the ground. So here he is riding in an airplane with that kind of image in his mind. Sick to my stomach in Salzburg, canceling because of a sudden attack of the flu, flying to London to make some recordings for the BBC. Bach, Haydn, Hindemith, Sweelinck, Krenek, Berg, flying back again to Salzburg, 2 recitals and off to Lucerne, Bach's D minor concerto, high fever and perspiration, having to constantly wipe my eyes. I go out on stage and bow and start to play. Surprisingly, my performance has very few flaws. I'm surprised when I receive a standing ovation, but no applause is worth the agony that I'm forcing myself to go through. I'm a baggy pants vaudevillian, a pork pie hat, and a big red nose. I cancel my last performance and fly back home. The drone of the engines keeps me awake. I don't ever want to fly to Europe again. Well, a page of deepening imagery we leave out, and we go back to this. He's in Europe again. A room in a hotel. The Hotel Wir Jahrzeiten in Hamburg, canceling 9 performances. An image in his mind? A cleaning lady listening to music through an open door. Suffering from the flu. 101 degrees. Chronic bronchitis in the right lung. No hope of a speedy recovery. Tempted to cancel the rest of the tour. I can't be expected to play when I am ill. In bed for 10 days with almost nothing to eat. Rice porridge and fruit salad day by day. X-rays and other tests. Focal nephritis is a frightening term. My manager sends a telegram urging you to get back on your feet. He has never played a note in a concert hall. The doctor expresses concern about my kidneys. Writing a check to Wolfgang Kolisch, the impresario, for his losses. Money well spent in return for my time. All of the friends who express their concerns are thousands of miles away. The greatest blessing of all of this is that I am alone. Well, okay, another page left out of deepening imagery, and we go on to this. This is the 4th of 8 sections of action. I have come to the end of the line. I sit here in a rental car, a long, long way from the cottage at Upter Grove. I stare out at acres of shifting sand. An image in his mind, a piano in the shimmering sunlight of a desert mirage. Well, no footnotes in the novel, but this is Israel only 10 years after it became a country. So the fact that he's in a drafty hall playing is understandable. It wasn't long before there were concert halls in Israel. But when you're unhappy, as he is with touring, anything that happens makes you even more miserable. So here's the situation in Israel. About 10 years after Israel became a country. It's not Israel. It's me. It's me who was just not ready for Israel. A leaden piano whose joyous notes sound more like funeral bells. Another piano which seems to have hands which reach out and clutch mine, so I have to wrestle like Jacob for every note. A hall converted from a shed down at the dockside, cold air whistling past the sacks that seal the doors. A bank of heaters humming on stage, an obligato to the pieces that I play. I am a camel who has run out of water, crossing a desert without a well. I ask myself if this is what I was born to do. What to do? What to do? I put my rental car in gear and clear the sand with the windshield wipers and drive away. So miserable in Israel. Leaving out another page then of deepening imagery, on we go. Here I am at the top of the pile, the bijou in the window, which the spotlight most admires, the envy of every triangle player in the world. An image in his mind, a prisoner with diamond manacles binding his hands. So, what exactly does the spotlight reveal? Maestro Bernstein coming to me with his friendly request as I limber up my hands in the green room sink. Maestro Zell entertaining the orchestra, hearty laughs all round as I supervise the adjustments to my chair. Mr. Huffer insisting that he knows the Horowitz sound. Records spinning on turntables with errors clogging their grooves. Pianos that bark, pianos that growl, pianos that bare their teeth and bite. Reviewers who dip their pens in the blood of their latest kill. Well, those three people, Maestro Bernstein, Maestro Zell, and Mr. Huffer, will all be thought about by Glenn Gould in more detail. But again, not happy with his current situation as a touring concert pianist, playing the same tunes over and over. Okay, again, a page of deepening imagery left out. Here's number 6. Taking stock of my career so far. It is clear to me that working with people has never been my forte. I do not wish to compete for the votes of the crowd. An image in his mind, a celebrity. A celebrity cast in wax and left out in the rain. Sorry, I can't read the printing here for some reason. Celebrity cast in wax, left out in the rain. That's how he feels. That's the image in his mind. I am weary of the system. I was weary when I was a boy. The system distorts emerging careers. Impresarios keep their charges in an impresario's convenient jar. Maestros keep their proteges in a maestro's convenient jar. Reviewers keep performers in a reviewer's convenient jar. Patrons keep virtuosos in a patron's convenient jar. They don't pound you into a jelly as one would a combative foe. They invite you to liquefy yourself, to make yourself into a compliant, malleable entity. Then you pour yourself into a jar and the lid is closed. I would like to present my music from afar. The rays of the sun are always welcome, but the sun is 93 million miles from the earth. I am Glenn Gould, that force that cannot be contained. I am Glenn Gould, that force that cracks the jar. So you find yourself in a situation which has a set of conventions that people are very happy with. They're glad to see you. They enjoy your performances. But you don't like what you're doing. Well, what do you do about it? Leaving out another page of deepening imagery, we go to the 7th of 8 sections of thought here. Reading a book that was sent to me by an admirer. An image, a person made of ink distilled from a book. Life as a series of bubbles. Bubbles of sunshine, bubbles of rain. The girl Onami, her outer surface, her inner pain. The embryo artist, to be a Matabi or a Malay. An hour of living inside this novel. Is it possible to shape one's life as a haiku? To live one's life as a water droplet, connected or not connected to the world? Such questions are the bridge slats over the abysses. Such questions are the bridge slats over the abysses of countless canyons. A coincidence that I'm reading this book on a train. Well, that book will be an image arc in the mind of Glenn Gould, which he will think about in great detail elsewhere in the novel, not for today's reading. Okay, then a half page of imagery, and then the last image unit in this chapter of thought, which is chapter 3 of 16. The University of Toronto, invited to give the convocation address, an honorary degree as a doctor of law. An image in his mind, a bearded sage dispensing wisdom in the agora. Hundreds of caps and gowns. I lean into the microphone. What do I say to them? Well, I will certainly say what I often say to myself. It is important to convince oneself of the futility of living too much by the advice of others. The only advice that one should heed is that of oneself. Afterwards, I'm interviewed by a reporter. I intend soon to give up concert work. I have a few more obligations and then I'll be free. The voice of the reporter. The reporter chuckles as he writes my comments down. You made this claim before, Mr. Gould, more than once, as I recall. What do you say to people who don't believe it's true? So here's Glenn Gould, that's the last section of that chapter, telling himself he wants to retire. Now, he became famous at 23. 2 or 3 years later, he wants to retire from the concert hall and do something else. And who's going to believe him, eh? Who'd give up that wonderful career? Okay. I write a planning notebook and a reflective journal for each of my creative works. My creative works are my novels and novellas, and I now have written 29 novels and 5 novellas. So I've written over 100 books in connection with my writing program. So why write notebooks and journals as I write my novels? Well, I can only remember coming across 2 writers who wrote about their writing experiences. Virginia Woolf must have about a dozen journals, which I would compare to my notebooks as they were written during the planning stages of her novels. So here's one of them. And as I say, there must be about a dozen. I have most of them and have read all of them. You know, I do buy books, but I also borrow books from libraries. So Virginia Woolf's, what she called journals, or I think what were called journals after she died and they were published, very, very helpful to me, but written as one is planning a book. Henry James has a series of prefaces which he wrote after he had written his novels. They are what I would compare to my journals, which were written after each novel or novella is in rough draft and only needs polishing to become a completed work. So I learned a lot from Henry James and his prefaces. I don't have copies of those. They were at the beginnings of his novels, but I borrowed them from libraries and read them. Now, thirdly, Henry James has also left behind a big fat book. Here it is, nice and thick, of notes in which he plans his creative work. So that was very helpful to me. Just how do you plan a novel? Well, you don't plan it like Henry James, because you're not going to write a Henry James novel. And you don't plan like Virginia Woolf, because you're not going to write a Virginia Woolf novel. But you learn about the value of planning and something of the process of planning. That's what I learned from those writers. Not how to write like them or how to keep notes and journals like them, but just how to manage, as I say, the writing process. So I'll come to that. Reading the notebooks, journals, and prefaces of these 2 writers excuse me, helped me a lot at the time when I was trying to figure out not only how to write my novels, but how to manage the writing process. How to manage the writing process. That's what I learned. I've come to see 4 stages in the writing process. The first stage is the planning of structure before writing reams of dialogue or pages of description. I do this by making point form lists. First for the topics of the chapters, then for the topics within each chapter, and then for the subtopics within these topics. This is the creation of forms into which to pour the white-hot imagery of one's creative imagination. If done in the right order, from forms to forms within forms, I do not have to go back and restructure or rewrite. Number 2, the second stage I would call the planning and writing stage, wherein I start writing creatively, knowing where each item will go in the novel form and the chapter forms. But at this time, I am also brainstorming forms within the other forms that need more thought. So everything you've planned as a form, you can write and pour imagery into. Whatever you haven't planned enough detail, you need to do more thinking about. Okay. The third stage is the writing only stage, in which I have all forms and all forms within forms clear on paper and in my mind, and I've only to fill in these forms creatively and imaginatively. The fourth stage is the polishing stage, in which the entire rough draft is complete, every word, and all I have to do is spend many enjoyable hours reading the manuscript and thinking of better words. So you don't have to structure the novel or novella. It's already done. All you have to do is think of better words to replace the words that are already there. So here's the one I'm working on now. I'm polishing John and Mother Goose, The Carnival of Tales, novella by John Passfield, not published, not sent to my publisher, but I will send it to him in a couple more weeks, at which time I'll be free to start on a new writing project. So that's the fourth stage, polishing. In a nutshell, I would say that I write planning notes as I plan and write a novel, as they help me to keep a clear mind about the writing process, and I write journals of reflection after I've written a novel or novella, as they help me to assess what I've done in my writing, in writing my previous creative books, and to get a sense of what I'd like to do when I write my future creative books. To put it bluntly, I can't imagine my having persevered in becoming and remaining a writer had I not kept notebooks and journals as I worked my way through each stage of the writing process. So, here is the novel, Glenn Gould, Light and Dark, a novel by John Passfield. It's on Amazon, and you can not only purchase it there, but you can get more information. It's at my publisher's website, roxmillspress.com. And speaking of notebooks and journals, there's a notebook and a journal, 2 separate books, free access on this project, which is the Glenn Gould Novel Project, available on my website at johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. Have a look if you're at all interested in those topics. Lastly, thank you for watching this video.